Most people think that wealth is accumulated in a very short time. But I want to break down how you can accumulate wealth over time, because it is not true that you will accumulate wealth in a short period of time. In this channel, as you know, we talk all things real estate, all things personal finance, so that you are the driver of your financial situation and not the passenger. Because if you are the passenger, then you are not getting the benefit. The driver will be, because he controls the destination of where you'll end up. So let's break it down, shall we? So as I say, if you are always thinking short term in the wealth accumulation business, you won't make it. But if you're always thinking ahead, 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, you will be able to accumulate wealth. Because wealth is about what you do today that will actually contribute to you accumulating that wealth in 5 years' time and in 10 years' time. So if you're short-sighted and you can only see as far as today or tomorrow, then you will not be ready in 5 years' time or in 10 years, which means that you will not be prepared. So you actually prepare for wealth today, tomorrow, for 5 years to come, for 10 years to come. So I want to break down how you can actually accumulate wealth using property. This is why property is one of my favorite platforms of accumulating wealth, because it is low and it requires patience, persistence, but in the meantime you are accumulating a whole lot of wealth, right? So as a young person today, what are your means in terms of property, how you can accumulate wealth? So many youth make the mistake of, when they buy their first property, the first thing is they delay to buy their first property because they want to buy a very beautiful, very big, huge property, and at that point they cannot actually afford, when they actually start working, that kind of property, because that property is the property of their dreams, right? I want to tell you that that is not important. So if you are thinking long term, your first property can be any scrappy property. It doesn't matter what it is or how it looks like. The problem is most people want to be regarded as soft life people. That, you know what, you can just pose in your house and do all this kind of stuff. That is not really important if you're thinking about accumulation of wealth. So your first property doesn't have to be a dream house, right? It doesn't have to even meet one of your single requirement, right? It just have to be a property. Let me explain why. So in terms of accumulating wealth, right, using property, what is important is what we call equity, right? Equity in a property is a portion of that property that actually belongs to you. I've actually made a few videos about this, of what exactly is equity. I'll put a link on the description below so you can go and find out, but I will break it down to you so that you understand. So as I said, equity is the percentage of the house that belongs to you, right? So for your first property, what you need to make sure is that you buy a property that has equity, for example, right? So what is equity? As I already explained, it is a percentage of ownership in a house that actually belongs to you, right? So what happens if you are buying a property? It means when a property is actually worth this much, you must actually maybe try to buy it at this much, right? So let's say the property is worth 500,000, and you, when you want to buy it, you buy it for 480,000. So what it means is that you have an equity in that house of 20,000 rand, right? So now that equity over time you can increase it. How do you increase it? So as you pay your bond on that house, you increase the amount of equity, right? And then over time, in most cases, a property will appreciate. When it actually appreciates or goes up in value, you accumulate what we call equity. And this is where wealth creation becomes so much easy. And another thing to take into consideration is that when you actually buy that property, you actually make profit or make equity when you actually buy the property, not when you sell it. All right? So now it is very much important to understand that. Say your game plan is, as young as you are, it doesn't matter how old you are, when you start your first job, if you're really thinking long term, then you should just buy any scrappy property you find. It doesn't matter what it is, right? And then when you buy it, you stay in it for a minimum 5 years. You are able to really grow a good amount of equity, right? So let me continue with this line of thinking. So when you repay the bond, you are increasing equity. When you stay for like 5 years, the house is probably appreciating, right? So as I said in the example, the house is valued 500, you bought it for 80, you have 20,000 equity. After 5 years, we will say you have paid up, let's say close to 200,000, right? So maybe that is your equity of that 200,000 that you have paid up, which means that you owe the bank something like 280,000, right? And over time, as I said, the property goes up in value. Now you have maybe it improved, it appreciated by 100,000. So now what means the amount of equity that you have in that house is 300,000, right? 300,000. What happens in that when you have that, right? So this is where it becomes a snowball if you are thinking long term, right? So what happens? You have 300,000, right? So how can you access that 300,000? So at that point, you can decide whether to sell the house, whether to rent the house, or you can decide what you want to do, right? So let's say you decide to sell the house, right? So when you sell the house, what happened is that you still owe the bank the 280,000. So you are selling your property for 600,000. So the 300,000, boom, in your pocket. So what do you do with that 300,000 that you got after 5 years? If you are thinking long term and you are thinking wealth, right? You can divide that into two. Take 150,000, 150,000, or divide it into 3, 100,000, 100,000, 100,000, and you put what? Maybe you put a deposit on one of a flat, right? Or 3 flats, right? And then you apply for that. Maybe in the meantime, buy another property, or maybe just buy one flat and buy another property that actually meet your requirements. In this case, you do it 5 years again. In this case, you might find that you have to do the process maybe 3 years, but after you do that, it becomes much more easier and you are able to multiply that wealth, right? Or, like I said, you can just decide to rent out this property that you're staying in and do what we call a refinance. When you refinance, you still end up with that money, and you can just take that money and put it in another property. Now you have two properties, one you're renting out, one. So if you reproduce this process, it's gonna make you a lot of money. And that's how wealth is accumulated using property. It requires a whole lot of patience, a whole lot of discipline. It's not a get rich quick scheme. No, it's not that. And you know what they say, whatever that comes very fast, when it comes in very fast, it goes out very fast. But when you are patient with it, you build it from the scratch, you start with it, and you are persistent with it, you know what? Once you get it, you will never lose it. I hope this video adds some value in your life, and it's gonna make you a whole lot of money. So also don't forget to subscribe, to comment, to add on what I just said. Maybe I missed something, or if you don't understand something, you can just ask some question. But I will see you on the next one. Cheers.